Hello, I'm Bert Bassett. I've been a business seller on eBay for over 20 years. I even worked for eBay for 11 years. I've helped thousands of sellers of all sizes to grow their sales on eBay, and now I'm creating videos to help you. And today, I'm going to be talking about one strange tip about storing your items and some general logistics advice. It's a lot of this stuff is going to be teaching you to suck eggs or telling you what you already know, but it might be interesting. I'm also not going to be clickbaity, so I'll tell you what the one strange idea is. The strange idea is that when you're storing stuff, you have a natural instinct to put things that are the same type of things together. So if you have vinyl records, you put them together, DVDs, you put them together, clothing items, you put them together, collectibles, and so on and so forth. What I actually say to you is that if you separately store that so that in each location you have a mix of those items, it's actually going to allow you to pick and pack more quickly, to identify your objects very quickly when you're looking for them. It's going to cut down on lost stock, and it's going to make it so that other people, not just you, will be able to help you out, both when you get bigger as a business and also um, if you're not around for some reason and someone has to take over in like an emergency or when you're on holiday. And the reason being is effectively, if you have a reference number for a place where an item is and you know broadly what type of item it is, if you go there to that location and there's only one or two of that type of item, then you take far less time in terms of finding it, say compared to trying to run through a load of items that are stacked in alphabetical order, that you've actually had to stack in alphabetical order and spend time doing it. So that's the quick idea, something to think about. I'll go into more detail if you carry on with this. In order to do that, you need a SKU system. And basically all that means is labeling your products. So you give them an individual number, but you also have a code at the beginning of that SKU, which says whereabouts they're stored in your storage area or lockup or wherever that is. The fact that you should mark your storage and the items as well, as in put a label on the items, put a label on your storage, and that way you can find your item easily and you know where it's going to be stored, and it's reflected in the photography you take, so that when you sell an item and you look at the photo of what it is you've sold, it's really quick. You can have a look and find the number without having to look around too much. And then I'll do a little bit of a chat about how come time is precious when you scale. Um, I've dealt with very big resellers, thrifters, flippers, whatever you want to call them. And actually, as they scale, their ability to list more quickly and pick and pack more quickly become the primary key performance indicators for them. You know, if they can go from listing 20 items a day to 30 items a day, if they can go from sending 100 to sending 200, that's actually usually one of the more practical limitations to how you can grow your business on eBay. So anyway, that's pretty much what this video is about. You probably have enough to go away and think about that anyway. If you do, please like and subscribe. But if you want to hang around, here's the detail. So you'll see what I've done here is I put a little label. Be very careful it's not a marking label, and it's one that you'll be able to take off. And I put it here so that when I take a photo of it initially, it'll have that information on the photo. Won't really mess up how my item looks on eBay, but it will help me out later on. So how does my system work? I have shelving areas, and I have sections of those shelving or boxes where they are. And so shelf A has 3 different areas or boxes. Shelf B has 3 different areas of boxes. Shelf C has 3 different areas or boxes. So what happens when I have an item? So this one is C2 number 1, and therefore it's in location C2. So I know I'm going to find it. It's got the unique number 0001. Give yourself enough digits here to make sure that you don't ever have to reproduce a number, because that could cause you problems. And that means that anyone at all, not just me, will always be able to find my item. If somehow, like, I have to go away for the weekend and someone has to fill in and do my deliveries if some unexpected family event happens. If it gets really busy and I need someone to come in and help me, I don't need to teach them how to do it. And this is a classic thing. Lots of sellers have systems that aren't quite like this, or no system at all, because they really know their stuff. And you probably really know your stuff. You probably know exactly where your Leo Sayer LP is, or your, like, your Pokemon card, or your DVD of Jaws. But a stranger won't. Also, what it helps with this location, if you combine it with this whole idea that you mix up things, is I know that this is a rocket ship because I have seen the picture of it when the order comes in. When I go to look for it, and I'll have read, it will say somewhere on the order, it's a rocket ship. When I go to that box, only one of my rocket ships is going to be in that box, or maybe only a couple of them, rather than it being a big box full of rocket ships where I have to work out which one is which. I'm going to be pretty confident of which one it is, which means I can move way more quickly. Likewise, if there is a DVD, an item of clothing, something like that, then it's going to be very quick for me to find it. Also, if a label falls off or something, this means that you won't have to have some kind of investigation. You'll just be able to look in the box and say, well, there's no label on this rocket, but it's the only rocket in this box, and so therefore it must be the right one. So it's really good for those unexpected things, as well as being a really quick system for you. And the most sophisticated way I've seen of doing this was with actually a clothing seller. And what they did is they had so many different sizes of the same thing and so on. What they would do is they would have boxes, and they would only have differently colored pieces of clothing in them. So rather than having a load of red identical tops but in different sizes, those tops would all be distributed in different locations. And when a picker or packer went up to that location, they would know if it's red, then it must be the one that I want. So that was a really sophisticated way of doing it. And it meant that they didn't have to have a location for every specific item and size that they had. Massively sped things up. And so you can do it. But I can't stress how important it is to have this kind of emergency where, if something happens, if you fall over and twist your ankle and go to the emergency room, then you don't get your deliveries out for maybe a day. If it's in peak season, that could lead to quite a lot of bad experiences. If it's a longer absence, even more. And eBay's not particularly forgiving of that. Try your luck sending an email to eBay saying, look, I'm sorry I messed up tens, dozens of orders, but it was because I was in an emergency room, and that it's not really an acceptable excuse. So you really need to have a system that someone can pick up on if there's an emergency. It's also, as I said, a great system for if you start doing better than you thought you were, and it starts becoming more confusing and more involved to manage your stock, and you maybe need other people to help you. With this system, if they've got a brain, you can teach them it in about 5 minutes, and they should be able to do everything really efficiently. So that's the long version of this. I've actually realized I don't need to go into too much detail on the rest because it's self-evident. So we've spoken about storing things that are similar items, not together. We've talked about the SKU system and how you go about doing that. I think the one thing to remember is you really don't want to get into a situation where you're setting up your number, so you might end up lapping yourself and having to use the same number again. Because again, it sounds really weird, but you start having thousands of items and you start reproducing SKUs, then you either have to start checking, have I sold that SKU before? Is it maybe still in stock? You can end up sending the wrong thing to people. So, you can be a bit super confident about this. Give yourself 7 digits and say, well, yeah, I'm confident that in my lifetime I will sell 1 million items just from that one location. Use a combination of letters and numbers, because obviously that's going to give you a lot more freedom, and the brain just works better in using like A26 is better than 126, because that could be 12.6 and things like that. So use mixtures of letters and numbers in your SKU system. I massively prefer labeling the product before photography. So like we'll go through this because I'm going to do a video about photography, but my process is I get an item, I stick a label on it almost immediately, and then I put it somewhere. And that way I can find it during the listing process as well. Um, what I then do is I take the photographs, and obviously one of them will have the label on it. Now, you might well want to take the label off, take a photo and put it on. But the reason why I like the label on my main photo, if I can, is because then when you get the order confirmation, you'll normally be able to relatively quickly see the main image and the title of the item that you've sold. And that, along with the code, makes it almost impossible to make a mistake. So, those are my thoughts on a SKU system. And I just remembered, if you weren't aware of it, it's a field just a couple down from subtitle when you list an item, and it's called either custom description or SKU, and you can enter in whatever text you want in that, up to a point. You can't write a novel, but you can put stuff in there. Marking your storage, again, I think you should always be marking your storage, because you want to be in a situation where, as I said, anyone can work out your system and help you out if you're busy or indisposed. And then the final point, I've already alluded to it, that time is precious when you scale. Once you start getting bigger, you will find that the things that limit you are the speed at which you can do things. And you'll have to start potentially making trade-offs with what you do. Like some of the really big people who do auctions only do auctions knowing, as I know, it's not an ideal way to sell, because actually you don't need to do any price research. If you are inexpert in what you're selling and you do not have any time to do price research, then actually an auction is a good thing to do. I don't advise that. I think one of the trade-offs you should make is list less stuff but know more about it. But there are sellers with literally millions of items, and they just can't spend the time on the items, and so they will either have to use some kind of sophisticated software, or they'll just auction stuff. So your ability, and we'll get into this when we talk about photography and other things like that, your ability to list more items in a day is going to make a big difference. But your ability to get a certain amount of orders out of the door in a day is going to make a difference too. And your ability to pay someone or ask for help from a family or friend in order to get more stuff out the door is again going to be critical. And if you're starting to pay for people to do your dispatch, then you obviously want that to be as efficient as you possibly can, because then you start having to actually pay for time, in terms of, if someone takes an hour to pick 6 things, then you're adding a sixth of their hourly wage to your cost of sale. So anyway, I hope that one weird trick was something that spurred something in your brain, or hopefully it was something that you hadn't thought of. If you don't have a SKU system, even if you think now, I don't need one, it's just not necessary, have a bit of ambition. I think self-fulfilling prophecy. If you make this kind of plan, you kind of put it in a bet on yourself that things are going to get big enough for me to need this. And it's not actually an awful lot of fuss to do it once you get into the habit. Anyway, I hope you like this video. Always interested in your comments, and especially if people have ideas about other videos I can do, please like and subscribe and tell all your friends about it. Those things really do make a difference, because it will allow me to make more videos and carve out more time for this. Thanks. Bye.